Hello, it's Jonathan at the Piano Lesson. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about my piano course that I wrote many years ago. It's a course that encompasses 100 songs, and there is a reason why those songs are part of the course, and there's a reason why those songs are in a particular order and presented in a certain way. But they're all songs that are based on primary chords, 1, 4, 5, and they're all songs that everyone should know. I think everyone should know. It's certainly every American should know because there's a lot of American folk music in it. And even though someone might not be from the United States, I think it's still very interesting. There's a lot of great American folk music, particularly from the Civil War. And Stephen Foster wrote quite a bit of music. Stephen Foster is quite a controversial figure in some respects because, well, let's just say that he was a slave owner, but his music sounds very innocent and kind of disarming. But I put all these songs together because I do think everyone should know them, at least every American. I've been teaching for a long time, and I'm surprised, having come from the East Coast, I'm very surprised at how many Americans on the West Coast particularly don't know this music, which is very familiar to me growing up. A lot of nursery rhymes, classical music, kind of blues themes, and but the idea in mind is in part to make learning simple, so you limit yourselves to a simple chord pattern. Now, I have said to people, I said, there's no such thing as chords, so why am I talking about chords? Well, because I'm stuck, like everyone else is, kind of explaining things in a very conventional way. But, I mean, we say there's no such thing as chords because a chord is a result of two or more melodies. So that's really why we're saying that. And we start out with songs that just have 5 melody notes, no more than that, and then 6, and then 7, and then finally it encompasses an entire octave. And then after we learn those songs, then we take those same notes, but we reframe them. So now, rather than starting on the first note of the scale, and by the way, all these songs are in C, rather than starting in C, we start on the third note of the scale, which is E, and we learn songs that just use that group of notes. And then the next group, we learn songs that are, again, use the notes of the C major scale, but start on G. So they're framed within the G scale. And that's just to also to help people in the learning process so that they can focus on the notes that they really need to play, and they don't have to guess. They can sort of relax a little bit and not worry about playing a whole bunch of other notes. And I'll show you what some of those melodies are. But more importantly, I want to emphasize how simple music really is. Now, I'm not saying it's easy because playing instruments not easy, but the ideas are fairly simple. They're fairly straightforward. You don't have to necessarily learn a lot of things. And it's always best to build on what you know. So if you know a familiar song, then learning that song is very helpful because you know how it sounds. That's the disadvantage that, say, kids have, really, because they don't really know any songs. So you have to teach them songs. If you teach them what music is as an adult, well, you kind of know what a song is. So that can help you. And when you play the wrong note, you can kind of catch yourself. So that's a big deal. The thing that adults don't have is time, right? So we're all busy doing things for various reasons. We're working, we have families, we have school obligations, all kinds of things, right? Kids, yeah, they're busy too, right? But they do have time. They're busy learning. Hopefully they're busy, educating themselves for a long time. So they don't have to worry about, making money and having a job and all those things that can distract us. And also, I will say that it's important to have some privacy. So if you have a keyboard and you practice with headphones, that's important. I am a big believer, though, in practicing on a real piano. It's just incredibly different than playing on a keyboard. A keyboard really isn't a piano, and it's not going to give you back what you need to play. It doesn't have to be a fancy piano. It really doesn't. It can be a very modest, very simple piano, as long as it's in good repair, meaning that it's able to be tuned and it plays relatively consistently. I used to see parents despair that their kids weren't practicing until I found out what kind of pianos they were playing on, and they were just filthy, dirty, malfunctioning instruments. So who would want to play on those, right? And then they would blame it on the kids. Well, that's really not fair. So you need an instrument that works, okay, and you need to find someone that can help you make that happen. Piano tuners and technicians, they really, I will tell you, they love going the extra mile because they love what they do. So they love trying to make the piano as good as it can possibly sound. They are typically very timid in asserting themselves because they don't want to lose work. They don't want to give you a big bill. I mean, that's just a fact. So, but don't be afraid to, if you have a piano and you have a piano tuner, really kind of pick their brain and ask them, hey, if you were me, what would you do to my piano and how would you make it sound better? Because it can really make an enormous difference in terms of, your enjoyment of music and how you play. So let me give you some ideas about how these songs work. So, for instance, we start out with a group of 5 notes, okay, and we start out with that group of notes, C, D, E, F, G, and there's melodies that encompass that note. And then eventually we add one more, and then one more, and then one more, and finally we're playing songs that use the entire octave. And we are also adding one note below, and maybe even 2 notes below, but pretty much that's the set of notes that we're playing. So here's our scale, our ascending scale. Here's our descending scale, and here's a song. Right, and that's our Joy to the World. And that scale is what we call a harmonized scale. So I'm essentially playing the notes of the scale, but I'm playing more than one note in the scale. I'm not precisely doing it like this, but that's pretty close. Right? That's 2 notes. That's 3 notes. These are 3 melodies. There's the first melody, and the second melody, and the third melody. And all 3 together sound like that. So that's why I say there's no such thing as chords, because the chords are a result of those melodic lines, and we listen to music horizontally over time, as melodically. So the next group of songs, but would use notes from the C scale, but reframed. All right. Sometimes we might even call it a mode. That mode has a name. It's called a Phrygian mode, and it's the same notes, but it sounds like it has a beginning and an end right to it, but the intervals have changed, and that's why it no longer sounds like a major scale. Here's what a major scale would sound like, right? Without the black keys, right? It doesn't have the same quality to it, but it is framed within an octave. So we learn some songs just using those notes, okay? And then we take the same idea and we reframe it and to G. Right, that's our Christmas tune. Away in a manger, no room for a bed. Right, that's the kind of the logic behind it. And so out of these 100 songs, well, you're going to know one. You're probably going to know one. And there is an Italian song. That's it. That's it. I played a few wrong notes, but you know. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Anyway, yeah, there's actually a lot of international music. I mean, it's something to get started, so that you can form a connection with the keyboard. I mean, that's really the main thing, and that you're not burdened with playing too many notes. Now, the left hand has chords in it, but I've limited them. So you know your primary chords is C, F, and G, right? All of these songs use at least 2, 1 and 5, but they might use 1, 4, 5. And when we're only playing, oh, I don't want that clef. We're only playing 2 of the 3 notes in the chord. So C, E, G, well, typically we get rid of that E. So you're typically always starting with C and G, okay? And there's 2 possible ways to play the F chord. The F chord is F, A, C. This is root position. If I take the C and I lower it an octave down here, that's another way to play the F chord. That's called an inversion. And that's called second inversion. Root position, first inversion, second inversion. So that's one possibility to play the F. C, F, A, okay? And typically we're not using that note. So you're just playing that, you're just doing that. You're just moving your thumb, all right, a little bit. Or the other way to play the F actually is to just use that and not use that. So you would do that. All right? So you do this instead, okay? And the G chord, the third way to play the G chord, well, G is the common tone. Here's G, G, B, D. To play an inversion, well, G up an octave, this is first inversion. B up an octave is second inversion. So what you're going to encounter is B, D, that's right. B, D, G, okay. It's been a long day, guys. C and F, right, and A, right. This is B, D, G. So usually you're going to play, say, the 2 outer notes, right, and you're not going to play that, right. So you're going to do this, just move your pinky, or you're going to move up 1 note, and you're going to play D and G, and you're not going to play the B, right? And that's really it. You have 3 chords, all right, 1, 4, and 5, and sometimes you're playing them in an inversion, like the F chord, okay? And again, typically you're always going to play the F chord in second inversion. There's something called there's a form of chord notation called figured bass, and this is how it looks: 4, 6, 4. Why 4? The Roman number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. F is the 4th note in the C major scale. And then you examine the distance between the notes. C, D, E, F, G, A. That's a 6th. And C, D, E, F. That's a 4th. And so the figured bass is expressed as Roman number 4, uppercase because it's major, Arabic number 6, and then 4 written vertically like that in the lower right-hand corner. That's the way you write figured bass for an inversion. And it's an important thing to know. I'm sorry, but it is. And you won't be able to understand anything about any music theory book if you don't know that. And then the 5 chord, well, typically we have this. This is a 6th, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's a 6th. And this is a B, C, D. That's a 3rd. So usually when first inversion is expressed, you just say 6. We don't Yeah, did I have that right? Uh, what did I want here? Yeah, right. Root position. Um, we don't say 6-3. We don't say that. So just 5-6 would be first inversion. Okay, and that's it. But this is pretty much what you're going to expect to encounter in the left hand. And what we do is we do some creative things with it. So what are some creative things? Well, for one, just because you typically play a melody in the right hand doesn't mean you have to play a melody in the right hand. You can also play the melody in the left hand. And often in piano music, you have melodies played in the left hand. So we try to be a little bit creative in that respect and take a melody that's supposed to be played in the right hand, play it in the left hand. Play it in both hands, for instance. And also start to learn to embellish the piece. So the word embellish meaning to fill it out a bit and add some notes, make it sound a bit fuller and more interesting to play, a bit more creative. And we also talk about the music theory in the book. In other words, how do the melody notes function? And to me, it's a pretty important and pretty interesting thing to talk about. But generally, you have two kinds of notes. You have notes that are part of the chord, and you have notes that are not part of the chord. And then of the notes that are not part of the chord, they might still be in the scale, okay? So they might still be in the key, or they might not be in the key. And there are names for those notes. And it's good to understand how they behave, because once you start to see certain patterns in music, it makes it a lot easier to play. And you can understand how it makes the music, it changes it has a certain effect on the listener. Some sounds are more consonant and some sounds are more dissonant. And so it's a balancing act between the two. Notes that are consonant are notes that are typically, let's say, restful, notes where you have that resolve. And notes that are dissonant are notes that are create tension, create some sense of color or motion, but they're and they can be very dissonant. Let's say typically those would be notes that are not even in the key. So two C's, let's say, those are consonant notes, and like a C and a G, those are relatively consonant. Or if I invert that and play a G and a C, that's a fourth. Those are relatively consonant. But there are gradations. If I play C and C sharp, that's fairly dissonant, okay? But it's the management of consonance and dissonance. That's how you write a song. That's how you play a piece of music. You manage that. That's how you tell a story in sound. You manage the consonance and dissonance in various ways. You learn how to do that, recognize it in the music. So that's kind of a quick explanation of how my book works. And there's 100 songs. It's divided actually into 2 volumes. And the nice thing also, when I wrote the book, we had the internet, but it wasn't that great. I mean, now you really have the internet. So if you don't know a song, guess what? You go on YouTube and you listen to it. And maybe you listen to like 5 versions of it. When I was a student, I mean, if I was studying a piece of music, I would try to listen to as many versions of it as I could. I would make sure I didn't copy it, though. That's pretty important. At least if you're going to copy a song, that's okay. If you're going to copy the style of the song, that's all right. But just be aware that of what you're doing. You're copying it. You're not really necessarily playing the music correctly, or even in a way that would make sense, in your own style. But and also there's Wikipedia pages. I know a lot of people don't like Wikipedia. I think it's incredibly amazing. I'm sorry, but I don't have that many criticisms about Wikipedia. And there's so many Wikipedia pages about these songs. And this is a great way to learn about history and geography. And it's just letting your imagination run wild. So all of the songs in this book, in other words, have a backstory. and they're pretty interesting. So that's something that is an aspect of the book, just to sort of learn a bit about a big word here, ethnomusicology. So an ethnomusicologist, but someone who studies the history of music, the origins of music, kind of from an anthropological point of view, cultural point of view, and it's a very concentrated course, and it's designed to try to get you playing and up and running as fast as possible with the least amount of effort, both for the teacher and the student. I kind of had myself in mind too a little bit, because it's less wear and tear on me if the course works. I really wanted it to work. I really wanted it to be something that people could do on their own, and it didn't need an instruction manual necessarily. So, but it is thoughtfully put together. Now, you could jump around in it, and actually that's fun to do too. You could just explore the pieces that you might have heard before, but just again being aware that there is a logic behind it about the way I put it together. But you know what? Sometimes songs that seem more complicated aren't. They're easier to play, and vice versa. Some songs that look very easy may give you a little more trouble. Okay, well that's fine. You can just move around, play them as you like, come back to them. They're not meant to be perfected necessarily. They're very sparse arrangements. It's just enough to make it sound like music, get both hands playing, get you connected with the keyboard, and provide a framework for experimentation. I'm very big on experimentation. I didn't realize this, but I guess when I was a little kid, I was pretty experimental. And even the first songs that I was playing for my first piano teacher, I really wouldn't play them as written necessarily. I mean, I could, and I did, I suppose, but I would be playing, like hand over hand arpeggios or something like that, and just embellishing things. You could play a simple song. I mean, kind of, I don't know. I guess I was doing that at 8 or something like that. So don't be afraid to use your ear and try things. It's meant as to provide you with a safe environment. I guess we have safe spaces now, right? As we grow up with safe spaces, it's a safe space to have fun in. And again, I said that I think everyone should know these songs. I certainly think every American should know them, because there is a lot of folk music in there, and a lot of American folk music. Although there's a lot of American folk music is from other countries as well. So there's holiday music, there's Christmas music in there quite a bit, actually. So that's I haven't shown you the songs precisely yet, and I guess I'll get around to doing that, of course. But that's kind of where I'm at with trying to teach people how to play the piano, how to learn music. So it's not just about playing the piano, really, because this is also good for someone that plays other instruments, but they want to understand the keyboard, they want to understand harmony. You could even play these songs on other instruments, and in fact some of them have words, so you can sing to them as well. I'm a big believer in singing. I think you learn a lot by singing, and if you can, and if you're willing to, even just humming, whistling, whatever it is, but you learn a lot about music, because singing makes you aware that you are music. We think of music as being separate from ourselves, as being a separate instrument. The instrument's over there and we're over here, and we're kind of have this boxing match going on. But that's not really true. The music is part of who we are. I think that's why we like learning music. It's about self-discovery, really, and we have these tools. We have musical instruments to help our self-discovery. We have composers and compositions to help that self-discovery, but all of these are worlds that are within us, and the whole world of vibration. So that's another aspect of it. And also for people who have children, and maybe they played the piano before, or maybe they played an instrument before and they want to teach their children. And so this is like a tool that people can use to help teach their kids, how to do that. I mean, there are a lot of beginning courses out there. I will be honest with you. I mean, I've used some of them myself for kids. I consider them to be busy work. Busy work meaning it's just something you do. You put in front of a child just so that they have something to do. And hopefully you try to get them off these things as soon as possible into real music. Well, this is real music. To me, it's a better type of environment to start with than playing songs that are they're almost not even really songs. They're just sort of written for these beginning books, and I don't know. I mean, musically, I don't think they have that much value, but they provide structure, and sometimes people need structure. They need to feel like they have an assignment, and that they have written work, and so probably the most well-known course is the Alfred course. People use Alfred a lot. Faber is Faber and Faber, or there were all kinds of courses growing up. I remember I think I had a John Williams course. I don't think anyone uses those anymore. Brimhall was one. I mean, there were all kinds of beginning courses that kids used to use. So anyway, I hope that helps a little bit, and thanks for all the nice comments from my buddies out in the beautiful country of Italy and Sardinia, which is Italy, right? I mean, it is Italy, but it's not Italy. But it is, but it's not. So, okay. All right. I'm going to excuse myself, and I will see you next time. This is Jonathan with The Piano Lesson, and you can visit me at thepianolesson.com. Bye-bye.